something about cliches started here. This is supposed to be like writing workshop. You can't get away from it. They have strength because they were out there for a reason. Look at it this way: if you can take that cliche and become interchangeable in any character's mouth, you're ready to find something else. If anybody can use it, that's all.
I think now in the interest of time that we'd like to open this up to questions from the audience. Here's your opportunity. Yes?
Well, many of you know at this point that I grew up in the inner city of Charleston, and I went to NC schools, and most of my friends were black, and my sister married a black guy, and my nephew's black, and anyway, so I left. I mean, I had to make that choice you're talking about. Should I stay or should I go? Well, for me, there was nothing to stay for because things were just going to hell in a handbasket. It was the early 70s. There were no jobs. My dad was out of work. My mother was bipolar. The stress was getting to her. I mean, I had to leave. And so I just made my difference to make straight A's, blow away standardized tests, and get the hell out there. So I did. I went and put myself in college in Ohio. And in order to do that, I had to cut down my accent, which I still support that I had to do that. You know, they teach code switching now in schools in Southeast Ohio. And that's a really good idea, to teaching you to be aware of the context and how to act in the outer world in that context. But that's aside. So I'm a poet now, at least now and then. And I'm struggling with these issues about language and how do I mean, there's all this context that goes with it. There's nothing in Appalachia that happens without context. It happens with landscape, it happens with family, it happens with church. I mean, if I tell you somebody's trailer went down the hill in January rain, you know immediately I'm talking about climate change. If I tell somebody in the Pacific Northwest that, they have no notion. I mean, I wrote this poem about Bill Withers and what an inspiration it was because he got out and when we heard him singing soul music, we could hear that voice and we knew he had to be from where he was from. We got so excited. And that, I can try to transmit that, but when I wrote that poem, it came out in what you're not supposed to do, which is write somebody else's dialect. But hell, I spoke that dialect when I was a kid. And, I mean, what the black kids spoke. And so I'm dealing with these issues around language. I'm dealing with these issues around Appalachian languages, really. And around the context. After my mother died, I wrote a poem that, you know, if I gave it to Wilma Acre, she'd take one look at it. She might say, this is crap, I don't know, but she'd say immediately, this is about death. But if I give it to somebody in my writers group in Seattle, they have no idea. Maybe some of the subliminal image is going to work on them, but all that old-fashioned imagery, if I reference the Cedar Tree or something like that, that's just not, it goes right over their heads. So I am trying to write in a way that works on all the levels and gets across. I mean, now I'm working on a memoir, and I'm coming up against the same issue. So I'm really, I just was so keen to come to this panel. So my question really is, how do you do that? I mean, how do you be true and authentic and write in a way that somebody that you grew up with would get it immediately without selling out, and still write in a way that's accessible to people from outside Atlanta?
Keep the characters honorable. Nothing else. Keep them honorable. Your protagonist is honorable. Your antagonist is dishonorable. They talk how they talk.
Maybe you're just overthinking, you know, so you only have to get down to the hard part, which is just sitting there. There's so many things we can overthink. We can't figure out the universe. I mean, forget all those, you know, questions about how am I going to use language when I start writing this poem. Because if you do that, you're just going to freeze up in self-consciousness. If you kind of, I was talking with somebody a while ago about what lyric poetry does that nothing else in the world can do. And that thing is, it's one human being, just a regular human being, standing up, speaking up at the center of their life. So you don't have to be some kind of expert or know everything or have a huge, profound philosophical viewpoint or have figured out everything about craft. You just have to hang on to that one idea that your perceptions of the the world are extremely valuable and authentic, and you speak out of that.
I think it really does have to be authentic, and because if it's not going to, you know, it's not going to ring true, I think. And if people don't know what you're talking about in certain contexts, you know, I mean, first of all, you can contextualize things. You'd be surprised what you can do in the context of your writing, so that you can make it clear what you're talking about, even if the person's not familiar with that particular thing or that particular term or whatever. But you know, I like to read older writers. I like to read a lot of British fiction, you know, 19th century British fiction, and I don't always know what they're talking about. So there's such a thing as the dictionary and the internet and the encyclopedia. You know, I'll look it up, and if somebody doesn't know, you know, what, you know, some of my terms, if they don't know what leather breeches are, look it up. You know, I'm sure you can find them on the internet somewhere. You know, that's.
Again, there's a balance act, but I think you can absolutely make some expectations in your reading.
I just want to add that I'm almost as squeamish about the word authentic as I am the word truth. This is probably because a very well-known Appalachian writer said to me before I had published anything, and, you know, anything like that, and I said I was writing about Appalachia. He knew me, and he goes, yeah, but you didn't grow up there. And it's true. I didn't technically grow up in West Virginia. He's like, what? And he wasn't being mean about it. He wasn't trying to say that, you know, he was just questioning me. And by God, don't question me. Just don't go down that road. You know, so that's one thing. If somebody is always, it's an easy thing for somebody to tell you you're not authentic. It's a cheap shot. And don't let it get under your skin. Because who the hell are they? You know? The other thing that I would say, this is something that I talk about because I'm a writer, and I'm going to tell you, like, writers, you know, I'm not going to say a word about poetry because I can't. But if you're talking about, like, a memoir, or you're talking about a novel, you know, there are lots of different voices in a novel. There's a voice of a character, there's the voice of the novel itself, and even if you are telling a novel in first person, in Midwife, it's told in total first person. However, the voice of the novel is not the same as Elizabeth's voice. And then there's also the voice of the author. And that, to me, is what I'm trying to keep out of my work. You know, because when I'm letting the voice of the character, however that comes out, in whatever form it comes out, it comes out. And then there is the voice of maybe the narrator, if you want to think of it that way, which is different than the character. And then you have the voice of the novel itself. And if you can get those three to a position, you know, you've got to, if you think of it, instead of trying to capture the voice, think of it as capturing different voices. And sometimes that gives me some breathing room.